welcome to the eye care training. I anticipate and hope we're going to be able to do more of these meetings in the future. This is the first one I've ever done in a group setting. And this is the first time I think I've ever met most of you, except Catherine back there, that do what I call CFC STAR Plus services. Because eye care services is two parts. CFC STAR Plus, which is what you guys do right now, your attendance, and you get your, you have authorizations through an MCO. MCOs are, for instance, Molina, Superior, and United are in this area. Has anyone ever had a Mera group in the past? You're a Mera group at one point? Okay, how about Cigna? Because Cigna's gone. Cigna went to Molina, a Mera group has folded, and then Molina has taken over. Fortunately, we have been doing pretty well with doing business with Molina. There has been some hiccups in the past, but it's kind of smooth. So Molina at this point is 100% of all the people that we serve in eye care services. Superior, I do have a contract with. I had one person who was Superior, and they ended up moving to Molina. However, I do have an open contract. So if at any time you feel that you need to change MCOs, you have two other options out of Molina, Superior and United. United, I do not have a contract with. I'm going to work to try to get a contract with them. But however, that doesn't really affect us right now. So that is what an MCO is. A little background on how we kind of evolved to where we're at. I do have pamphlets, and I urge you to take one before you leave. I'm also an HCS provider. Who's familiar with HCS? Home and Community-Based Services. Most of you should be on the waiting list. The reason I kind of got involved in CFC STAR Plus attendant care is because I know one day you guys are going to get a call from the county, Dallas Metro Care, Tarrant County MHMR, Lakes Regional, wherever area you're in, and they're going to say you're up for waiting, your slot is up, or your individual slot is up. And I hope you move over to our HCS services. And that pamphlet, it'll tell you what those HCS services are. It's a lot more services than just attendant care. You can become host home providers also, which is you stop the clocking in, you just write weekly notes, you hand them every week. Those are going to be the people that you're going to integrate with a little bit during lunch. If you have any questions, you can ask them what it's like to be a host home provider. It's not the clocking in and out, that goes away. It's not a schedule. We know that you're taking care of your loved one 24/7, 365 days a week. So regardless of that is going to be an easier way to provide services and a little bit less stressful for you. So I urge you, when you do talk to your service coordinators from the county, to ask them, hey, where are we at on the HCS waiting list? And then they should be able to let you know or give you some type of a proximity of what to expect or when to expect a slot to open. And then they'll give you a list. And guess who's going to be on that list? Me. So I hope that you continue on with us through the HCS program also. That is where I originated and have most of my knowledge in. So, any questions about that at all? HCS waiting list. So I urge you to ask your service coordinators if you're even on the list. So some people aren't even on the list and they don't know it. And you need to urge them to put you on the list if you're not. It is a 15-year waiting list. So some of you may have been on it for quite some time. So every 2 years, they set aside some money for slots to come out. And then they'll let you know, as that is. Some years it's a lot more money, some years it's not so much. It really depends on the Texas legislature, where they feel they need to appropriate funds for the biennium. But we do get reports as far as there's 2,000 slots that are going to come out in the state of Texas, so on and so forth. They do focus on and concentrate on the bigger populations, and we are. Houston, then us, the DFW area, then San Antonio and Austin, so on and so forth. So we get more slots living in this area than we would somebody in a rural area. Okay? All right, so let's start with program processes. I want to educate you on how this kind of works, because it'll make you a little bit more familiar why these things are happening and why you have to do some of these things. Every year you guys have an annual meeting with the service coordinator from the county, correct? And they sit down and they do a CFC assessment. And they determine the hours that your client, your loved one, your individual is going to be assessed or be able to have rendered to them. So that CFC assessment can fluctuate. We don't want it to fluctuate low. We want it to fluctuate, if anything, high, or at least maintain. I know some people have had some hours drop. The reason for that is because you might be answering the questions differently than you did the year before. So you can also ask for that CFC assessment, a copy of it from your service coordinator, so you know what the outcome is, and it'll also show you the end result and how they come up with 48 hours a week, 20 hours a week. I have some with 7 hours a week. So you'll know that. So next year when they come around, you want to try to maintain that. Or if you say, hey, I'm struggling, I need more help, then you can add more minutes or more hours to that plan. Does that make sense? So what they do with that CFC assessment is they usually then send it to Molina. And there's a service coordinator in Molina that's assigned to you. And they look over it and they say, yes, 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 yes. Most of the time, I've never had issues with Molina saying, no, we don't, we disagree. It's happened before, but that was more AmeriGroup, Superior. Molina, not so much. They're pretty steady. They take the word of the service coordinator on the county level. So Molina blesses that, and that's when you get an authorization. So here's the thing. If your service coordinator is trying to get a hold of you to schedule these annuals, please respond back to them because they have a time frame. There's been times where the service coordinator cannot get a hold of you, and then they have to do what's called an extension. And they don't do an extension because this person needs to be extended because we don't have the meeting, we don't have the paperwork. Guess who has to call them and ask for the extension? What happens is the authorization will expire. We are not able to bill for the services. And then we find out, the authorization expired. We do have a better system in place than we have in the past to determine when those authorizations are due. So we've been pretty much on top of it. However, sometimes we'll ask, we need an extension. And then Molina will come back and say, well, we haven't been able to, or this county will come back and say, well, we haven't been able to go in touch with the family. We've been calling. They haven't responded back. So it's very important around the time of the year that you know that your authorization is due or you're supposed to be having your meetings, that you correspond with the county and let them know, hey, let's go ahead and get this meeting. Let's knock it out. They usually do it 3 to 2 months before your authorization is going to expire. Okay, so try to do your best to communicate with them. If your address has changed, your phone number's changed, you make sure you call them and you give them an update on that too. Make sure you call us and give us an update on that too, because your coordinates change in Vista. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So that's how the origin of authorizations is. And this is going to be an annual process. So when you get your authorization, let's say you're a new individual, you're coming in, and we're going to use this video for individuals that are coming in new also. I turn around and I'll ask you, and here's something that's special about eye care services. Most of you attendants are either mom and dads or related, right? Because of that, there's pros and cons to that. The pros are, you're going to take, more than likely, you're not going to call in sick, right? Because of that business plan that I had, we survived COVID because people weren't calling in sick and families weren't denying attendance. So I want to kind of give a little perspective on that. The state of Texas looks at attendant care as if it was somebody that I hired from the outside. And about 98% of CFC attendant care services are people coming in from the outside. This program is special. They allow relatives to provide the service. And they also allow individuals to live in the same home of the individual receiving the services. All these other attendant care services do not allow that. So they did a special type of regulation to allow this to happen. And this is where I got involved. I'm like, okay, well, that's easy. No, I got a lot of families and parents that are been doing this, for 30, 40 years, taking care of their loved one all this time. Hey, do you want to get paid? The answer is always yes, right? I might as well. I'm doing it anyway. So that's the pro. The con is, some of times, is you forget that you're on the clock, right? Because you're so used to been doing this for so many years, you forget, oh, now I have to punch in to do what I've been doing for 30 years. And that becomes a struggle on our end, and we'll get more to that. We try to make it easy for you because once you get the authorization, and they tell us most of the time coming on board, and if things change, we'll let you know, or you call us. And how many of you have ever been to a job where you've been hired, and they say you're hired, and they turn around and your boss tells you, when do you want to work? You're hired, but you tell me when you want to work. We do that here because you're the family, you're the parents. We know some of you have first jobs, second jobs, have other activities, other things going on. So we turn around after we get the authorization and we ask you, what's your schedule? What schedule do you want? So that is an added bonus when you're family members because you can do that. It'd be different if it was someone from the outside. Remember, the state's looking at thinking that it's someone from the outside I'm hiring. Usually it's the member telling me. So I'm the middleman. The member or the family telling me, I need help during this time, and this time. It's my job to find someone who can help during this time, and that time. Keep that thought process in mind because that's going to come down to a lot of things that we're going to discuss in a little bit. That's the way the state looks at it. They think you guys are outside attendants. They look at you that way. So in our case, that's not the case. And that can become difficult at times. So that's why we have this training here because we want to improve on some things as if we're outside attendants. So now we're going to move on to the schedule. When you give us a schedule, we put it in Vista. Everyone know what Vista is. You all have that on your mobile app. You put it in Vista. We put it in Vista, and it just automatically locks in. So one of the issues we've been having is having you guys maintain the schedule you gave us. Like, oh, wow. Didn't you guys give this to us? What's going on? It's kind of in your hands, but then you're still working off schedule. When you work off schedule, there's nothing wrong with it. However, every time we have to make a change, or when you work off a schedule, you go into what's called a manual verification mode. There's two types of verification modes, an automatic verification mode and a manual verification mode. Does anyone have any idea what an auto verification mode would be?
Working within the hours that you've set.
If you work the scheduled hours. And I think there's a give and take 5 minutes before or after. Say it's 3 o'clock and you clock in at 2:55, so on and so forth. There's a time range. I can't remember exactly what it is. And it'll and you clock out when you say you're supposed to clock out. Remember, you guys gave us a schedule. So I don't want to say that over and over. So what I'm asking is to just maintain that responsibility and please try to keep to your schedule. If you can't, you You work early or you work later, I understand that things happen. But you will go into a manual verification mode. So say, for instance, we're going to have a timekeeper. My timekeeper was my nephew. Now it's going to be our biller, Gary, and a lot of you have spoken to him. If you work off schedule, most of you, this is the fancy phone you guys text to right here. So I have it now. It will go into Gary's hands. You're to text. A lot of you I'm seeing are taking screenshots. So I've had the opportunity to look through and see, hey, taking screenshots, basically communicating, this is the schedule I worked. And I'm thinking, well, the only reason they're taking screenshots is because they're working a schedule that is not the schedule that you've provided us. And that's okay. But it does go into manual verification. So every day, other than the weekend, so on Monday, Gary would manually verify, will manually verify your times from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Tuesday, he'll verify your times from Monday, so on and so forth. So every morning, he'll pop up Vista, and we'll have either a whole bunch of people in the red or not so many. If you're in the red, more than 20% of your schedule, guess who finds out about it? The state. Yes, and we'll find out. We'll get to a little bit of that too. But the state is now. It's been about 3-4 years that they've been able to see everything that we do. Because remember, the state thinks I'm hiring. You guys are coming from the outside, and they think this member over here is being deprived of the times that, because really the member should be giving me the schedule, not the attendant. That's a little bit what makes us a little bit special, because the attendants are actually giving us the schedule because you're mom and dad. So they think it's the member or the member's family giving me the schedule, and I'm turning around and giving it to an outside attendant. So when there's an outside attendant that's not meeting the schedule of this member over here, it looks like this member is at the disadvantage. Does that make sense? So that's why they monitor that. So the state wants to make sure that the member is at least getting what their wishes on the schedule, services when they desire. So we know that's happening at home. So all we need to make sure is that you clock in and out with the schedule that you give us. If your schedule needs to change, a text, a call, let us know, and we can change it. It's easy. What we don't want to do is be changing from week to week to week. Well, this time this and this time that. We don't want to get in that pattern. We want to try to get a permanent schedule in place. Say your job changes or something going on that you're not going to be able to work the schedule you're giving us permanently. You need to change it. We have no problem doing that, as long as you stay within the hours that the authorization tells you on a weekly basis. Okay, making up hours, and this is kind of part of what we're going to go over. If you know that you're going to be out of town, first, let me identify the times you can and cannot provide services. You brought that up. If you are out of the state of if the individual that's receiving services is out of the state of Texas, not you, but the individual that you're providing the services to, which is your son or daughter, and typically they're probably going with you, is out of the state of Texas, you cannot provide services. Medicaid is a state-funded benefit. It's not a federal benefit. So if you're out of the state of Texas, you need to let us know. If you're going on vacation out of the state, you need to let us know. You can only make up hours within the same work week, within Saturday or Sunday to Saturday, because your authorization is a weekly authorization. Does that make sense? If you go to HCS, a little tidbit there, if you go to HCS and you're doing CFC, first of all, you wouldn't be the attendant because they don't allow relatives nor people that live in the home to do CFC. That's why I kind of mentioned host home. You guys would fit perfectly into host home services. But in HCS, they give you an authorization for a whole year. So you kind of like freelance. That attendant will be able to freelance kind of those hours with the family. Unfortunately, we only have a week in this program. So you would have to let us know, hopefully prior, you're going on vacation. Then we can put a schedule in just for that week. Does that make sense? All right. So communication of changes in schedule and work times. The number here, the 5001 number, is still where you're going to communicate. It's just somebody different behind the curtain. Okay. So communicate changes here. If for whatever reason they don't respond back to you, I haven't been responding, but I've been looking and seeing, and I'm going to hand this off to Gary. But Gary's been keeping track of everybody who's in the red. He's been doing that since last week. So he has a list of those that he may need to reach out to, and vice versa. So if you've been reaching out to us, we're not ignoring you, but we can probably look at that and say, yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right. If your schedule is changing or fluctuating and you worked your full hours, say it's 5 hours today, but you're off and worked your 5 hours a little bit differently than your schedule, we can see that, and we won't probably bother you about that. Here's where it becomes difficult. Now, so 80%, the state wants you to have an 80% auto verification. Can you all do that? 80%? Meaning you maintain your schedule 80%. If it goes under 80%, the state can see that. They're going to come and they'll probably approach me. And they'll ask me, what's going on? Your outside attendant is not doing what you hired them for this member over here. We know that's not true in y'all's case. But remember, the state doesn't look at it like that. They think I have an outside attendant that's not coming to work when they're scheduled to work. What happens if you miss work 80% of the time? You're probably not going to have any place to work for very soon. So that's what they see, and they don't want the provider to be neglecting the individual. So that's where we come into play, and they're going to come to us. Then I'll say, well, it's mom and dad, and she just can't escape the schedule. That's going to be hard for them to get. So that's why I asked you guys to give us a schedule. If you need to change it, let me know. Here is another thing that flags the state. You clock in, but you forget to, or you clock out, but you forgot to
Clock in.
And when you guys, who doesn't not know when that's happening? Because Vista's telling you, especially if you're clocking in, but you're clocking in when you're supposed to clock out, and Vista's telling you, Vista's saying it's a clock in, and you're like, oh, dang it. This is what I've always told everybody. When you clock in, come back 5 minutes later and see if it took. Just get that as a habit, because if it didn't take, then clock in again. And then come back and just double check it, because it's technology. No Wi-Fi, no cell phone signal may have not been good at the time that you're clocking in and out. So just come back and verify that it took. If you do that, then you're not going to have that issue anymore. But operator headspace, I can't help. So if you forget to clock in or you forget to clock out, you automatically go into manual verification. It might say you clocked in when you're supposed to clock in, but you don't have to clock out. If it'll continue on and it'll clock you out at 11:59, y'all. Did you know that? If you don't clock out, it'll come up, say you start at 3, it'll clock you out at 11:59. You know what it'll do after that? Clock you back in at 12. And then you keep on going. So can you imagine how much of a mess that looks like to us when we pull it up? I'm like, oh, we know what didn't happen. All we would like you guys to do is to call us when you notice that. Text, I forgot to clock in, I forgot to clock out. So in the past, huge change right here. In the past, when we noticed that, we would turn around and say, you didn't clock out. When do you want to make up those hours? Because we can't bill it. We can't. Well, I've been informed by the TWC lawyer that we can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. So This is what one of the changes are that the new policy is please take the initiative to let us know whether you worked or not. I forgot to clock out. However, I did work my scheduled hours. That's all I need from you. That's all we need from you. Then we can make the adjustment in Vista, and you don't have to make up the hours. You just kind of have to own up to not clocking in and out, and that's okay. However, who sees that? The state. So you're only allowed to mess up that many times, up to 15 times a month with the same error code. And that's forgot to clock in and out. Or forgot to clock in and out, whether it's in or out, it's the same error code. If you forgot to clock in and out and you work that day, and you let us know. It's easier for you to let us know on the phone and text us and let us know. So Gary would be there and say, oh, done it. And he'll fix it. And you don't have to make up hours. Is that a good trade-off?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Instead of having to reschedule with someone else and you have to clock in and out differently another day, you don't really to make up the hours. Making up hours because you forgot to clock in and out is gone. You just need to verify with us that you actually worked, and then we can fix it. However, you have limitations on that because it throws a red flag up to the state, and they're going to say, what's up with your attendant that keeps on forgetting clock in and clock out? And they're going to come to me and I have to answer to that. Well, it's mom and dad. That's going to be kind of hard for them to imagine. They're like, well, why aren't they doing it? So I just ask that if you let us know. If Gary sees that you're supposed to work, or the timekeeper, I shouldn't say Gary, it could be someone else later on down the line. If the timekeeper sees that you were supposed to work on Monday and it's Tuesday and he's opened up his Vista and we're in there, the portal, and we're looking, okay, they're in the red and it doesn't even show a clock in and clock out, and you haven't communicated to us, we'll communicate to you. Did you work yesterday? Yes or no? And what times did you work? And hopefully you're going to reply yes, and you're going to tell us the times that you're scheduled to work. We need that from you. I wish they would tell me that when I worked at Burger King. Yeah, time to clock. Yeah, because you really stopped 10 minutes before. I do have, I would say something is, I do have one or two, maybe three. There might be maybe one or two that are in here that are 100% clock in and out. Not even on Christmas, they do not bat in, like they're not, nothing, 100%. No, always auto verified for years. And I'm like, what's your secret? They say the alarm. The alarm. Any questions about that? Do you understand the process now? The state's looking at you as an outside attendant, and they'll always envision you that way. They think I hired you from the outside and that I have a stranger coming in to serve your loved one. And that's why they have these rules and regulations in place. And unfortunately, because this program is the one and only program that allows live-ins and mom and dads to do it, they're not gonna bend the rules and set a whole separate set of regulations for you guys. They're gonna adhere to the regulations they have across the board with everybody else who has attendant care services through Medicaid. Most of you guys know you're leaving town unless it's an emergency way ahead of time. So I know when I'm going to Mexico and all that stuff, that's no problem. We understand that. However, you can only make up those hours within that work week. So if you're gone for vacation for a week, you can't make it up the next week. And you kind of let us know, hey, I'm going to be gone, Thursday through Tuesday, but I'm going to want to make up the first week, the first half of the week, the second week, the last half of the week. We can do that. That's not a problem. And we will alternate your schedule as so. And then once all that's done, then you get back on your regular schedule. Okay. But it's really the forgetting to clock in and out and working off your schedule that the state sees and that they're monitoring. So what happens then? The state can come and find me and say, oh, you're really not providing good services to your individual who's chosen you as a provider. So therefore, we're going to write you up a fine, to make sure you do it. What you have in your hands here that I handed out to you is how you're doing, your report card for 2024. I know some of you came in midstream, but for 2024 is your report card. It says what you guys have told us your scheduled hours according to your authorization are, and what you actually worked. Okay. Like I said, I got 1 or 2 people that are at no variance. They work their scheduled hours perfectly. I know things happen, so most of you are not doing too bad, but this is where the raise comes in. In order for me to maintain the raise, I want you to make money, but I can't make money unless you guys make the money. So we want you to try to put that variance as closely to 0 as possible. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm asking of you. If you can't maintain it, well, guess what? I'm going to start shaking my finger. And the lawyer's like, you're going to have to do what any other employer does. You're going to have to start reprimanding, written notices, do this, do that. You give them most of its time 3 times, and I don't want to do that. You're mom and dad. But if it was an outside attendant, I'd have no problem with that. So that's the pro and the cons about this. So all I'm saying is, do me the favor of doing that so we can get as much out of your authorized hours as possible. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about that? Now you know how the system works? Okay. Is anyone wondering what the raise is going to be? It's pretty... the state... I mentioned this in the past, that there's several CFC pass-hab services, so they did not there's no regulatory with this, unfortunately. I'm waiting for it. They said regulatory is supposed to come from Molina Superior. I've not really seen any type of regulatory at all. And because you're pass-hab, the pass part of it there's an increase of it, but the hab part of it wasn't. So, but in the same way, I want to be also competitive also. And the only way I can be competitive, because although we may not necessarily fall under the regulation, doesn't mean all the other providers are aware that they don't have to. So the increase is going to be to 1060. To 1060, which is significant with what we're doing. All of you sitting here, you're going to sign off when the end, because I want you to go through abuse and neglect and exploitation. We'll sign off. I'm glad to say more than half of my people are here. And then those that might not, they'll have to make up the training somehow, because I want them to be aware of what their responsibilities are in order for us to move ahead. All right. So that's what the increase rate is going to be. And we will adjust that next pay period so that you should see that reflective. Okay. I am also contemplating, when we do have this meeting again, hopefully next year, that those that have the very little variance might get a nice bonus. So, little incentive to try to keep your variance as short as possible. Some people are out of town quite a bit, out of the country, and I understand that. And there's nothing. I'm not going to keep you from doing your family vacations and stuff like that. I get it, and that's fine. We also have in our reason codes can put in a type text so the state can see individuals out of the country on a family vacation during this time. We have a way to communicate through the back door to tell them, so it just doesn't look like bonk, bonk, bonk. It also gives us a explanation we can put in. Okay, so the state's not going to come back and say, well, this person's, and it's not we'll say the members out of the country, but they're usually there with the actual attendant. So we can just put members out of the country, so that they'll see that. Because what I'm putting in is not that the attendant's on vacation. Guess who I'm putting in that's on vacation? Does that make sense? So that way I'm like, well, of course, Medicaid's not going to come back and keep this guy from vacation. Well, we're going to keep track. We're going to keep track. What I don't want you guys to do is go on vacation and we have to find out you're on vacation. That's not fair. We just want you to communicate to us ahead of time. Same thing, I didn't work. What we don't want to be is the employer doesn't want to initiate, did you work yesterday? The employee should be calling and telling us, I didn't work, or something happened, or I couldn't punch in and out. That communication should be coming from the employee. Isn't that normal? Yes. Yeah. And so at times we don't find out that something's going on when we have to reach out as an employer. You didn't show up to work today. What's that called?
No call, no show.
What's it? No call, no show. That's what it is. We don't want to do a no call, no show. I want you guys to tell us that you're no calling, no show before you don't call no show. So they look at it like that. It's still a job, y'all. All right. I know it's your mom and dad's, but it's the state doesn't look at it like that. They always think that I'm hiring an outside attendant to come in. All right. Any questions about that? She said, as long as you're in the state of Texas, can you clock in and clock out? Remember, Medicaid is a state program. So if you're contemplating your vacation, your next vacation, and you want to get paid, go to Houston, go to San Antonio, go to El Paso. If you stay within the state of Texas, it doesn't matter. Because what happens when you're out of your coordinates? It asks you if you're out in the community. If the attendant is going out of town, but the member is going to stay at home, that member has a schedule. Remember, it's not your schedule. It's the member's schedule. So that member has a schedule that when they need services. So the question is, can we have somebody else do it? So it's basically you telling me, or sometimes it's like, hey, can you work my hours? Remember that? Hey, can you work my hours for me because I can't ask for them off? It's the same thing. However, they need to go through the hiring process. And then we need to assign them to that. So yes, so keep that in mind. They need to go through the hiring process and go through all of that. And then we got to put them in Vista, and then we have to give them their own employee number, and they have to download the app. They do all that. And most of that training is probably going to be coming from you to them. And but we'll do and you'll probably say, this is what you need to do. And then once that's set in place, we will put that attendant as the caretaker for those days. Does that make sense? The hiring process is going to be once. When you're going out of town and you want someone else to take care of the member, we need to know that ahead of time. Because we gotta assign that particular attendant to the member's schedule. All right, what I was hoping was happening before we came here today did not happen. Is ADP drops a huge box in front of my door of W-2s. That hasn't happened. I got the email that they're on their way yesterday, but they haven't arrived. Maybe when I get home, they'll be right there. So I was hoping I would have time to hand them out so you can take them with you. So we do not have paycheck stubs. You guys know that. So you don't get paper paycheck stubs. We have the paycheck stubs. They are there. They're just not paper and tangible ones. So how many of you have ever signed up for ADP self-service? Okay, so you can get your W-2 through there and print it out and take it to whoever's doing your taxes. Yes, we'll be putting them in the mail, and they will be in the mail there. So we should get them any day. I go and buy a huge roll of stamps and I send them all out. They should be getting them by the deadline. What are we on, January 18th? Yeah, you should be probably, if they arrive today, they'll be out in the mail probably Monday or Tuesday. Okay. So if you are not aware of that, or you want to just let us know. you know the number, but I'm going to give you an email. And some of you have email. This is Gary's email. He does the billing. He does the accounting. It's info, I-N-F-O, at iCareServicesInc.com. He will be able to go to ADP and he can have ADP send you an email with instructions on how to get into your self-service ADP. Okay, something I just want to mention. People, we talked about going out of town and being out of state. You cannot provide services. When's another time you cannot provide services to your member? When they're in the hospital. We need to know when they're in the hospital because Medicaid takes that day and we can't bill it. So that's another thing, the communication we need to know. So Medicaid will take that day and we cannot bill that day. Or the day after if they're still in the hospital, or the day after that. I understand you may be going to the hospital and helping the hospital staff and caring for your loved ones. We still can't bill it. It just can't. If it was an outside staff, would they be going to the hospital and doing that? No. So think of it like that. So when they get out, then you let us know. But please let us know if they're in the hospital, if they get admitted, or even if they're in the ER. If your schedule is part of that time, you can't be clocking in and out. If you're on schedule and something happens and you have to go to the ER or the hospital, clock out the minute they get there. And then let us know, obviously. Okay? You can make up those hours if it's within the work week. They're in the hospital for only 1 day or two. It's something minor. Then you can make them up eventually. Some people were saying that they weren't able to call in their number because their cell phone died and stuff like that. So that's kind of mentioned on here. But we go, if your cell phone's dead and you can't use the app, clock in and out, so on and so forth, just let us know. That's the same thing of communicating with us. Let us know that that there's an issue because if it's your phone's not working or fell on the toilet or whatever it may be, then you're not going to be able to clock in and we're going to find out anyway. Just let us know if you're having any difficulties or you have to change your phone provider. Your phone was lost like mine was 2 weeks ago. I understand it's a pain, to get that. If you let us know, we can put that error code in there. Remember, we don't want a lot of error codes, but things happen. So we understand. We're going to verify. There's going to be two. This one's going to be for abuse and neglect. I'm going to pass around the clipboards and take one, sign it, and then hand it in to me. So this is what I'm going to look at so I can give Gary the list of names of those that were here so we can adjust your pay rate.